On April the 2nd, Trump hits China with the biggest tariff blitz in United States history. He promises domination. 3 weeks later, Ford halts production. Boeing warns of military risk, and America's supply chain starts to collapse without a single shot fired. Why? Because Xi didn't retaliate with threats. He just cut off the rare earth minerals that power everything from iPhones to F-35s. Now Trump isn't fighting. He's begging. The same president who vowed to crush China is smiling on TV asking for a deal. This isn't victory, it's retreat. And the real cost is only beginning. On April 2nd, 2025, Trump declared economic war with sweeping tariffs on China, vowing to bring Beijing to its knees. But by June, he was on Truth Social praising a very good talk with President Xi and begging to restart mineral exports America can't function without. What changed rare earths? After Beijing halted exports of 6 heavy rare earths on April 4th, the same materials powering U.S. jets, EVs, and missile systems vanished from the market. By mid-May, Ford had temporarily shut down production line. GM and Stellantis reported delays across their electric vehicle divisions. According to Bloomberg, U.S. industrial production dropped 1.4% in May, its steepest fall since the 2020 pandemic recovery, while the producer price index surged 3.1% year over year, driven largely by raw material shortages. Behind the scenes, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett admitted, "We want the rare earths to flow, just as they did before April." But there's no signed deal. Just a phone call and a photo op. If Trump promised to win, why is he now pleading to get back what he deliberately pushed away China's supplies, over 90% of the world's rare earth elements? And after April's export suspension, the U.S. was left scrambling to fill a gap with no substitute. These minerals aren't optional, they're essential. Neodymium iron boron magnets, used in jet engines, missile guidance systems, electric vehicle motors, and smartphones, rely almost exclusively on Chinese supply. The Wall Street Journal reports that Boeing faced component delays affecting at least 2 weapons platforms by late May, while the Pentagon quietly flagged operational risk tied to rare earth availability. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, now in London for damage control talks, confirmed on Fox Business that America has no industrial alternative at scale. Meanwhile, Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng issued just 3 rare earth licenses to U.S. firms last week, only after direct requests from General Motors, Ford, and Lockheed Martin. That's not supply chain resilience. That's survival by negotiation. And now every shipment depends on a licensing process governed not by market forces, but by Beijing's evolving definition of national security. While Trump repeated the word deal 4 times in one televised clip, Xi never confirmed one existed. Because for China, silence is leverage. In response to U.S. tariffs and new export controls targeting Huawei's AI chips, China didn't retaliate with more tariffs. It suspended rare earth exports and introduced a licensing regime requiring national security justification for every shipment. According to Reuters, since the April 4th cutoff, only 5 export licenses have been granted globally, with 3 going to U.S. defense-linked firms under diplomatic pressure. The resulting bottlenecks caused a 27% increase in rare earth magnet prices in May alone, according to Benchmark Mineral Intelligence. Xi's strategy isn't bluster. It's bottlenecks. He didn't need sanctions or military threats. He simply paused what the U.S. needs most and let the pressure build. As former U.S. Ambassador to China Gary Locke stated bluntly, "We handed Beijing leverage, and now they're using it with quiet precision. So what happens if they tighten that grip again next quarter?" Trump launched tariffs before confirming if the U.S. had enough critical supplies to survive the fallout. And it didn't. The U.S. imports 78% of its neodymium and 98% of its dysprosium from China, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. There's no domestic refining capacity for heavy rare earths at commercial scale. A Pentagon memo obtained by Bloomberg in early June warned that the U.S. defense industrial base remains acutely vulnerable to extended rare earth disruptions. Meanwhile, manufacturers scrambled. Tesla rerouted some supply to Malaysia, but at a 32% premium, while Ford spent $12 million air shipping rare earths from Australia via emergency channels, a cost passed directly to consumers. Economists at HSBC now estimate the rare earth shortfall alone could shave 0.6% off U.S. GDP by Q3 if no deal is finalized. The Wall Street Journal notes that 64% of U.S. small manufacturers reported raw material shortages in May. But instead of laying the groundwork for alternatives, the administration relied on theatrics, announcing tariffs, then calling Xi days later to walk them back. What remains isn't strategy. It's a scramble to patch the very hole the policy created. Trump labeled the May 11th Geneva truce a total reset, boasting of a 90-day tariff pause and momentum toward a broader deal. But within 48 hours, his own Commerce Department undermined the agreement by warning global firms that Huawei's Ascend AI chips could violate U.S. export rules. China's Ministry of Commerce dismissed the reset as unilateral posturing, calling the new guidance a breach of trust and accusing the U.S. of escalating through regulation. According to Bloomberg, rare earth prices surged 19% over the following week, and the Hang Seng Tech Index fell 4% amid fears of a renewed decoupling. Vice Premier Heli Feng clarified China would continue processing export licenses on a security conditional basis, signaling compliance would now be filtered case by case. Meanwhile, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer accused Beijing of managing scarcity for leverage. With no enforcement language ratified, what began as a handshake, reset is now a standoff sealed by mutual suspicion and priced into global supply chains by the hour. Okay, so let's do a quick check-in. Who's actually winning here, and who's paying the price? China's trade surplus, with the United States, hit $43.1 billion in May 2025, up from $41.1 billion the previous month, even with the ongoing mineral squeeze and those stalled tech exchanges. Ford revised its second quarter earnings forecast down 11.2% after admitting EV assembly delays tied to rare earth magnet shortages. And Boeing's June 5th CC filing warned of classified program interruptions stemming from supply constraints in neodymium-based alloys. The ISM manufacturing PMI dropped to 47.2. That's the third consecutive month in contraction. And HSBC projected that rare earth disruptions could trim 0.6% off U.S. GDP if licensing delays keep dragging on past July. NFIB survey data showed 64% of small manufacturers reported critical material shortages, while 42% expected those constraints to actually get worse. Meanwhile, the Chinese government approved just 3 new rare earth licenses, each directly tied to major U.S. automaker lobbying efforts. So, if the scoreboard is trade surpluses versus factory shutdowns, the war isn't over. But the battleground has quietly shifted to the licensing desks in Beijing. On May 28th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced sweeping visa restrictions on Chinese students, calling them security liabilities, and vowing to tighten screening for all STEM-related academic visas. China's foreign ministry shot back, accusing the U.S. of academic isolationism and warning it would respond with reciprocal measures that would hit American universities. According to ICF Monitor, Chinese student visa approvals fell 18.6% year over year in April, and at least 14 visiting scholars from China were denied renewals in May at top U.S. research institutions. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department expanded its Huawei-related enforcement, saying even third-party firms using components derived from U.S. tech could face penalties. That move prompted 4 European firms to suspend joint AI projects with Chinese partners, according to Reuters. The Wall Street Journal reports that Stanford's Quantum Research Center paused 2 collaborative grants due to licensing uncertainty. The damage isn't really visible in headlines, but it's structural. The slow dismantling of decades of educational and technological exchange. And once it's gone, there's no fast rebuild. The Geneva tariff suspension ends August 9th, and with no signed deal reversion, is looming. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent admitted on CNBC that enforcement clauses are still unresolved, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick confirmed only 3 rare earth export licenses had been granted through June 7th, all narrowly scoped to automaker suppliers. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce projects that reinstating the 145% tariffs could cost American importers $18.2 billion in the fourth quarter alone. And the American Automotive Policy Council warned of potential 6 to 9 week production delays across Ford, GM, and Stellantis if magnet supply tightens again. China's Vice Premier Heli Feng hasn't committed to a license extension beyond the current 90-day window, saying only that conditions must be met before volume increases. Meanwhile, global shipping rates have jumped 14% since early May because of rerouted orders and speculative hoarding of rare earth inventory, according to Drewry Maritime Index. With no enforcement roadmap and August fast approaching, every handshake is being outpaced by deadlines. And industry knows it. Trump's televised optimism calling talks productive and rare earth flows restored stands in sharp contrast to the terms behind closed doors, where Beijing has approved just 5 shipments since May, each under strict scrutiny and tied to specific end-use disclosures. The Wall Street Journal confirms that China's new licensing system evaluates whether U.S. imports serve civilian or military supply chains, with defense-linked contracts facing delays or rejection. Meanwhile, the tentative Geneva Agreement lacks any legal enforcement mechanism. It expires in 60 days, and both sides have blamed each other for selective implementation. If tariffs snap back, analysts at Oxford Economics forecast a 0.9% GDP hit for the U.S. by year-end, driven by cascading price spikes and stalled output. What Trump calls a deal is structurally an undeclared ceasefire. One Beijing can rescind without warning, and Washington can enforce without consequence. Trump wanted domination. What he got was dependence, exposed in real time by licensing delays, supply outages, and Beijing's quiet mastery of timing. Rare earths were just the start. Now China is laying the groundwork for an even deeper decoupling, one built on digital currency systems, South-South trade expansion, and raw material alliances outside U.S. reach. And while Washington clings to the narrative of a deal, factories, labs, and defense contractors are already scrambling for alternatives that just don't exist. The countdown to August isn't just a trade deadline. It's a test of economic resilience. So if this looked like a reset, watch closely, because Beijing hasn't played its final card. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.